Welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. Michael Regan along with Kathryn Pedersen. Once again this week, breaking down a topic that we hope will help you, the entrepreneurial spirit, the business owner, the operator, the sales professional, to maybe take a moment and pause to reflect, review, and recast before you head into the second half of the year. So you've seen our topic. If you've clicked through, you know it's halftime. And halftime conjures up a lot of opportunity for folks that sometimes gets missed because halftime also happens to fall around this, I don't know, kind of a big deal national holiday called Independence Day. And that will create a lot of well-needed rest and break for most of you, but it could also cause you to skip out on this very valuable exercise, which is to take advantage of halftime to really look back at the plans that you've made, really look at the strategy you've been working with, and perhaps make some course corrections and adjustments as you head into the second half of the year. I've got a lot of thoughts on how to do this tactically, but I also think there are some things that I want to remind you of that you can do strategically and things that involve more of your mindset than they do your skill set. So I want to make sure we break those down. But of course, it's always more fun to break these topics down when I bring my fabulous co-host into the frame. So please help me welcome Kathryn Pedersen.
Wow, that was quite the introduction. Hey, exciting halftime. I always well, I am a football fan, so there is that.
There you
So
go.
I think it providing the visual of that is kind of nice. Get some popcorn and sit
There you
back
go.
and watch the halftime show for a few minutes here.
All right, well, let's change your camera angle. Let's pretend you're not watching the halftime show. Let's pretend you're a member of your Denver Broncos. I think your favorite football team. We could be
Yep.
Colorado Buffaloes if you'd like, but I think we
No.
know the theme. You're a
Yep.
Bronco fan at heart.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say that as a player involved in a really, really intense game, because I think 2026 for most of us has felt like a really intense game.
Mhm.
Not a game we can't win, but a game that isn't easy. Like we are having to claw for our wins. We're having to fight for our wins. The good news is I see a few of my clients, you included, who are finding ways to, in fact, carve out some winning. And so we don't want to, act like everything is just, impossible. It is possible. We're seeing folks do it, but there's still some folks out there who might feel a little bit of struggle as they're trying to figure out how to do that. We talked about that on a previous episode, and I'm sure that if you're in that camp, you're maybe listening in today, hoping that, okay, give me something I can grab onto that gives me some hope. If I'm
Mhm.
heading into that locker room, I'm sweaty, I'm hurting. This is not easy. It's not fun, but the scoreboard says we're still in this game. Okay, there's still a second half to be played. So that's the mindset I want you in as this Bronco player, not
Mhm.
the fan on the couch ready to watch the halftime show. As you're going into the locker room, coach is probably going to at some point give you a chance to catch your breath and then want to refocus quickly on the game plan. And some of the game plan coach is going to reinforce and say, these are the things that are working. Keep doing this. We are not stopping. This is our strategy. Coach is also going to point out some things that we're missing, like we've got to move differently when these plays are run. We've got to be prepared differently when these plays are run. And therefore, they're going to make some course corrections, some strategic adjustments. So now you're in the locker room hearing about that. Kathryn, tell me about the mindset you're feeling when you're in that locker room. You've been working really hard, but you know there's still a second half to play. What are some of the thoughts going through your head? Because I'll bet those are the thoughts going through most business owners' heads right now. What are you feeling?
It definitely depends on how the first part or the first two quarters, let's say, went. So if that was successful, you might be thinking, okay, holy cow, do I need, what am I exhausted? Where's my energy level? Man, I'm pumped. This is going to be a great year. Or, oh no, can I actually keep this up and make it through? Am I going to be dealing with burnout? What does that worry look like? Or it could be, holy cow, I can't believe it's already halfway through the year. I didn't do what I needed to do. I'm feeling people can be in different spots in that mid-year review. I think always we go, holy cow, but it's just then what do we do with that information in our minds as far as celebrating or reflecting or beating ourselves up?
Okay, let's dig into a few of those because you gave a few different angles of it, and I think they're all fair. So let's say you are going into halftime and you are winning. Is that feeling of I'm winning satisfying to you at that point? Or what are you doing with that feeling as you look ahead, knowing that there's still a second half? What are some of the thoughts that you would have if you were winning at halftime that you want to carry into the second half?
I think it's, hey, I've succeeded in a good market. And what parts of that did I should be really proud of myself and carry that into the new year. I always want to get tactical to, let's say, bring up a tool like keep, start, stop. Okay, great. Why? What really worked?
Mm.
What did we do that made a big difference in this first half that can carry us into the second half? And also, like kind of halfway through a marathon, hey, how's everything feeling? How's my team feeling? How's my body feeling? How's what's going on with this marathon and where we at as a health, let's say, do we need to move tasks around? Do we need to hire? Do we need to do some training? What do we need to do to propel us into that second half?
I like it. So, nerd alert. The coach in me was excited when you wanted to pull out a keep, start, stop. I'm going to throw a modified version of that one into the conversation. We'll call it the KISS tool. It's keep, improve, start, stop. And so you highlighted a couple of things that I think the first two really matter. If your team is winning at halftime, you're looking for clear evidence of the things you would continue or keep doing because the data supports it. The data says this is working. When we are running this, branding play, this marketing play, this sales play, this operational play, it's working. And we can look at the data points that back that up, even when we're feeling exhausted and it's hard to believe it's working because it's so hard to get it done. When you rise up from it and you look at it objectively, especially removing the emotion, and you just look at the data, suddenly you see, okay, we're going to keep doing that. And you may find with that some slight improvements that you could make, maybe some inefficiencies that exist. We're playing out this silly analogy. I brought you into the locker room at halftime, but you said it like, how's my energy doing? How's my body feeling? I mean, Gatorade exists for a reason because, some coach 40 years ago, 50 years ago realized, hey, dehydration is real and electrolytes matter and we need, some refuel. You may need some protein. You may need, so it could be that it's not simple. Well, same thing with your team. It could be that we just need some slight retooling. I think you and I talked about those slight modifications you can make on a previous episode. And I think those are critical. Is a great time to do those. You don't want to overbake those on a weekly basis, but on a halftime basis, it's a great time to make some strategic adjustments. So let's change the camera angle. You mentioned, but what if we come in and we're losing? We're not playing well. The team is getting their tail handed to them, and I'm not even sure if I'm excited to get out in the second half because we got to face more headwinds. Now that's the mindset. Play that out. What are some thoughts and emotions you have when you think about that version of halftime?
Yeah, so I always want to come from the helpful side of things. So I have to reset my brain a little bit.
Yeah, this may not be your scenario, but we
Right.
want to help someone who might be stuck there. So yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I think one of the great things about our business is we get to start over every month, right? You get to say, hey, great, that was last month, last 6 months. That is what they were. Well, the second half is really where our business picks up anyway, is most people are seasonally, summer's a little bit busier. So saying, okay, great. Now that I'm in a new season, I'm in the second half. Let's just, know that it's a new day. What can we do today to change that second half? What can we do to, as far as activities go, what can we do to reset, to reframe where we've been, and how can we move forward from that? What do I need to change? What do I need to adjust? What do I need to start doing?
Okay, so I want to again lean into that one a little bit because awareness is certainly important. And so asking those maybe very honest, reflective questions, what do I need to change? What do I need to do differently? Very appropriate. And yet, if you're losing at halftime, it's possible that you're not sure what changes to make. It's
Hmm.
possible that you feel paralyzed by the decisions you've previously made that weren't working because those were your best ideas coming into the year. And for some reason, they're not working. Could be your execution is poor. Could be that your consistency or your discipline are waning. You're not consistent enough to really measure accurate results. You're only seeing occasional outputs that are working. But whatever that is, this is what I want to lean into today when it comes to mindset, because so often when I'm working with clients, they come to me, they come to Building Champions, and part of what they are looking for is what I'm going to call the outer gear. And the outer gear is going to be made up of things like the actions they're taking, the decisions they're making, the relationships they're building, and the results they're getting. So if you think about seeking coaching help, those all seem like pretty important directional things to dig into. They want to get better in some of those areas, if not all. And because of that, they tend to want to drive right into the tactics. And they'll maybe spend a little time on the strategy, but generally speaking, it's come on, the clock is ticking. I want to do these things. Very fair. But if you're coming into halftime after we've done that and you're feeling like I'm not winning, we might have to take a look at a second gear that most folks aren't as excited to dig into, but it's super critical. I'm going to call this one the inner gear. It's a little different than the outer gear. In fact, we might learn later that it's driving. If you can picture gears in a machine, that inner gear might actually be driving these actions, decisions, relationships, and results. And it's going to be based on things like what you believe about yourself, what you believe about your company, what you believe about the economy. Might be based on some of your emotions, how you feel about things. What are the emotional components of your decision making? Because so often confidence is a big piece. You talked about imposter syndrome on a previous episode. These are things that exist in that inner gear, and they're going to start to drive your thoughts as well. And your thoughts are going to be impacted by influences that are around you. Some of that could be the friends you hang out with, or the coworkers you spend time with, or the partners that you work with. But it could also be the social media scroll that you have, or if you're still watching TV, the channels you tune into. All of these things affect your inner gear. And if you're coming into halftime feeling deflated because whatever you planned on and whatever you said you were going to do just aren't working, maybe some of that's got to be an honest look in the mirror of maybe you're just not doing what you said you would do. Maybe even harder is you're doing what you said you would do and the audience isn't buying it. Your customers aren't showing up. Your partners aren't joining, and it's not working. We've got to attack some of those topics that exist in that inner gear if we hope that those outer results are going to change in the second half of the year. I just put a lot on the table for you to play with there, Kathryn. But as you hear this inner gear, outer gear, again, put yourself in that mindset. Might not be your particular scenario, but put yourself in the mindset of a player who's at halftime and they're struggling. They're not feeling like they're riding high. They're getting kicked while they're down. Once you've heard the distinguishment between those two, what are now some of the thoughts and the feelings you have about what's available to you before you start making those strategic adjustments? Tell me give me some reaction.
Yeah, so I think that the hardest thing is people maybe don't really love to spend time in the inner gear, right? It's uncomfortable because it's not that they can just work and it'll make the problem go away. They have to really dive deep. So, what are some questions that, as a coach, you can ask somebody to have them start to think about that or move into looking at that inner gear versus the outer gear? Because so many people, including me, are like, oh, let's talk about the outer gear. That's way more tactical and way more fun and way easier to formulate.
Yeah, you're intuitively correct in that statement. People don't tend to just gravitate toward this one. It is uncomfortable for sure. And can we just, before we dive into the questions, and I'm not skipping that, but I think there's a reason why it's
Mm,
uncomfortable. Because if I'm willing to spend time looking at those and maybe even with my coach working through some of those, I have to be open and curious, and that has to lead me to the possibility that things are going to change. And change is hard.
yeah.
Change is not something that people are naturally excited about. As a rule, I mean, we certainly meet some folks that love trying new things, and if that's you, this may not be the portion of the episode that applies to your situation. But I heard it said not or a long time ago that change is difficult, but if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And I think the message that I'd like to give our audience today before we dive into some of these, what can I do to help draw that out of them, is just remain open to the idea that we do not live in a world, you don't live in a business that is stagnant. It is constantly ebbing and flowing and sometimes changing. Sometimes we talk more about change than change actually happens, but from time to time, we're seeing changes. And you and I sat at the Housing Wire gathering a couple of months ago, and we heard about enormous changes that are happening in this industry that I might argue are way overdue. That's going to excite some people and it's going to freak some people out. And I
Mhm.
have to accept as a coach that if you're in the second camp, I got to help you through that. I've got to now go back to these questions. I've got to be willing to step into the danger. Tell me what scares you about that, Kathryn. And tell me, as you're willing to describe what scares you about that, why that's scary so that I can understand and try to develop some empathy for what it is you're going through, because I don't want to act
Mhm.
like you've got a problem and you've got to fix it. I want to walk with you through that, but I really need to understand what scares you and why that scares you before we can do anything that dives into that strategic category. Maybe you'll answer that with me and we'll find out that there's a why behind the why. We may find out that you'll throw out an answer that at a surface level is factually true, but we're still not emotionally connected to it. You remember an exercise we did in the personal vision where, as we were going through a purpose statement, we asked what we called the five whys. And that was because every answer we give holds a deeper why. And that's not to get weird and intellectual or philosophical, it's to get honest about where the root of that real purpose is. Well, same thing applies here. Your fear is rooted in uh, some resistance that if we don't have the love and the care to dig deeply, and this would be true whether we're talking business, which is our topic, whether we're talking, marriage counseling, whether we're talking, a surgeon with his medical patient, or a therapist. I mean, these folks all have to care enough, have enough love and care for the person they're working with to say, I'm asking these questions not to be pesky. I really do want to get to the root, because if I can get to the root, there's a chance that we can decide what to do with that once we're honest about it. So that's really where I try to go with that, Kathryn, is I want to demonstrate love and care in the most professional sense I can. There's not a lot of, they're not, maybe not doing a lot of hugging and crying, but I also need them to know I really care. I'm not doing this to be pesky.
Mhm.
I get no joy out of holding up the mirror while you're at halftime feeling like, well, this sucks. We're not doing well. That's not fun for me. I'm not enjoying that moment. So I really genuinely am going to ask those deeper questions and I'm going to get to the why behind the why because I really want to help you. If you're drowning in the water, I don't want to just throw you a buoy and tell you good luck. I want to make sure you get all the way out of the water to safety.
Yeah. And I think that there's something powerful about that because I think sometimes people don't even realize things that are impacting the tactical things, right? Because they want to focus on those. But if they can instead dive deep on some of the inner gear stuff, it all of a sudden might propel their business that they can do the same amount of activities but have much more impactful stuff. You brought up in our pre-session that if two people do the exact same activities, so we have the same schedule, we call the same number of people, are we going to have the same results? And the answer was absolutely not because of that inner gear. And I think that that's what's so powerful about it. People may not even know, like, oh, my fear from a company that I worked at 10 years ago that shut down randomly and all of a sudden I was didn't have a job. Is that impacting your business today? Potentially, because you might be, duplicating your work so you don't lose stuff, or you might be doing certain things that you don't even know you're doing because you've got this underlying fear out down there deep that you haven't thought about. And sometimes just talking about it, boom, Now you can be a different originator or a different person.
Yeah, your intuition is spot on with this one, Catherine, and I see this over and over again because having done this now for going on 15 years. Clients, typically speaking, if they are in that I'm winning at halftime mindset, what they need to hear most is I'm like a corner man. We talked about this analogy in,
Mhm.
in the boxing ring or the MMA fight. You're out there swinging hard and getting hit hard, and it's like you don't have a lot of time to analyze while you're in the middle of that. You've got to be instinctive and you got to go. But when you get to the corner, if you're the winning fighter, if you're the fighter that's out there and winning, you need your corner man to say, don't get distracted. Don't, you're doing great. Like, keep it up. This is working. Look at the results. You're scoring. It's happening. I've got to keep you focused on not chasing a bright, shiny object or not getting distracted by someone else's game. Like, stay in your lane, block everybody else out. It's all working. But if you're coming into halftime and this same corner man shows up for the fighter who's struggling, we've got a limited amount of time to make those strategic adjustments. And what I don't want to do is start working on that outer gear quickly because it's the easy thing for you and for me. When I know deep down inside, if that's not what you think, if that's not what you feel, if you don't believe this in your heart that you can do it or that you've got the right team or that you've got the right playbook, if that's not there, then I'm doing you a disservice. I'm actually kind of sending you out into battle to get killed, and that's not fun. So I'm so glad that you intuitively see this, because once we do tackle some of those topics with the person who's struggling, I'm going to tell you, it's way more often than not, that's all we needed to do. We don't need to go back now and adjust a bunch of stuff in the outer gear. It starts to take care of itself, because deep down inside, and if you're listening today, I hope this is you. You already know that you're smart. You already know that you're experienced. You already know what you're doing. We're talking about the how, not the what. And if we can help you figure that out, really get out of your way. You're going to thrive. You're going to win. You're going to succeed. And if that's you heading into the second half of the year, I hope today's episode was super helpful to you, because I do believe in my heart that even if you're coming into the locker room with your hat in your hand because it is just a butt kicking out there, you can make the adjustments and come out and find a way to win in the second half of the year. But trust what we tell you about that inner gear. It's where the opportunity is greatest. If all we do is fix stuff in your outer gear, we make some course corrections to your strategy, we dial in a different time block, we change how you're scorecarding, and we head back out there and nothing changes, that's not a win. I want to help you win. I want to work on that inner gear. I hope that helped today, Catherine.
Yeah, absolutely. And another analogy, because we need a sports analogy from me, I guess, is I was thinking of a bike because you were talking about that, and you've got that the gear set on the inside and the outside, right? Well, if you're in the hardest gear and you don't even realize that there's two sets of gears, well, all of a sudden, if you switch one of them, you're like, oh, because it's like five gears differently quickly. So just I was thinking about that in our business, and how
Mm.
if you just all of a sudden switch one of those, how many things are so much easier if you have that one piece solved. And I find that, for example, if I'm not working out, I have to operate in a whole different gear every day to keep my motivation up. But imagine that on the mental side. If you have that and you're in a good mindset, those other gears just flow.
Catherine, I love it. What a beautiful way to bring that together. There is still more gear left in this year, so I hope we can get after it. You bring us home, my friend. Thanks for letting me riff a little bit on the inner gear and the outer gear today.
All right. Well, with that, we'll close out this episode of Building Bigger Lives. Thanks for joining us. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, all the places that you listen. We hope that you listen, share, like our episodes, and give us a rating. Thanks so much for listening.